No, I don't have a title screen for this one, but this one is called Multiplication Properties of Exponents. So we're going to be talking about a few different things about exponents, multiplication properties, or power to a power, things like that. So in this first set of problems, products of powers. So you notice how in letter A we have 2 to the 5th power times 2 to the 6th power. And what we can do with that, if they have the same base, notice how the 2 to the 5th and 2 to the 6th, they both have 2 as a base. If that's in common, what we can do is bring this into one single piece. So it's going to be 2, and then to the what power? Well, what we're going to do is add the 5 and add the 6. So this is going to become 2 to the 11th. Okay, you can leave it as that today. That's okay. You don't have to evaluate 2 to the 11th. Okay. Letter B, so you notice how we have a couple different bases here. We have 4s and 3s. So we're just going to have to bring them together separately. So 4 to the 2nd and 4 to the 5th, that's going to give me 4, and then you add the exponents to the 7th. Okay, and then the 3's together, so 3 to the what power? Negative 2 and 6, that's going to give me a 4. And that's how that simplifies. So you can actually multiply it out to get the real number, but it's okay if you don't do that. It works the same way for variables. So letter C, you know how we have the a's. We can combine those together, a to the 4th and a squared. That's going to give me a to the 6th times. And b to the 5th, we can't combine with anything, so I'm just going to rewrite that. So a to the 6th, b to the 5th. Letter D, I have a y squared, a y, and a y to the negative 4th. Now, notice how the middle one has no exponent, so it's like there's an invisible 1 there. So y to the 2nd times y to the 1st times y to the negative 4th. So 2 plus 1 minus 4, that's going to give me a negative 1. So y to the negative 1. Now what I actually want you to do is simplify it down. We don't want negative exponents. So recall from integer exponents, I got to put that on bottom of a fraction. So just a y in the bottom with a 1 on top. Remember that variable, or not the variable, the exponent, it's a 1, but I don't really need that 1. So we'll just leave that as y. Okay, so just a few different examples here. 1a, at the top I have 7 to the 8th times 7 to the 4th. That's going to give me a 7 to the 12th. For 1b, combine the 3's together. So I have a 3 to the 1, negative 3 plus 4, or just a 3, times 5 to the 8 plus 2, which will give me a 10. 1c, I have m times n to the negative 4th times m to the 4th. I can combine the m's. Remember, that's like a little 1 there. So m to the 5th times n to the negative 4th. And I don't want a negative exponent. So I'm actually going to have to move that n to the negative 4th to the bottom. So m to the 5th over n to the 4th. All right, now 1d. So I have an x and x and x and x. So x to the 1 and x to the negative 1. So that means I have an x to the 0. And then an x to the negative 3 when I add the x to the negative 3. And then x to the negative 7 when I include that last one there. So x to the negative 7th. Remember, I don't want a negative exponent. So that's got to move to the bottom. So I have a 1 over x to the 7th. These problems are what's called power to a power. And if you notice on the first example, we have 7 to the 4th to the 3rd. So this is a brand new type of problem that we're going to be looking at. Notice how in the previous problems we added the exponents. With problems like these, when you have power to a power, we're going to multiply the exponents. So you have two powers, like in this case we have 4 and 3. So you take the 4 and the 3, you multiply them together. So 4 times 3 will give me 12. So 7 to the 12th for letter A. Letter B, again, multiply those exponents. 6 times 0 will give me 0. So 3 to the 0 power. And remember, anything to a 0 power will give me a 1. Now these can go by actually pretty quickly. All I need to do is multiply those exponents. This will give me an x to the 10th. Number 7, that's going to give me a y to the 8 times 4 gives me 32. Number 8, that's going to give me a p to the 9th. 3 times 3 gives me 9. Okay, so that's a pretty easy type of problem. Just power to a power, remember you got to multiply. Um, so finding powers of products. So notice how inside the parentheses we have a couple different things for letter A and letter B. And what's going to happen when we have that with a power on the outside? So what you're going to do is you're going to take that power, and I'm going to make this a little bigger so it's easier to see. Is whenever you have two pieces inside those parentheses, you're going to take that power and you're going to distribute it to both pieces. So you're going to take the negative 3 to the second power and the x to the second power. So negative 3 to the second, think about it like this. Negative 3 times negative 3 will give me a positive 9. And then x to the second, well, that's just going to be x to the second. Just like that. Now this one looks a little differently. You're only going to distribute the 2 through to the 3 and the x. Only what's in parentheses. You're not going to distribute the 2 to the negative. Only what's inside those parentheses. So the negative in front just is treated like a negative in the front, so we'll just leave it as is. Then we have 3 squared, which gives me a 9. And an x to the second power, which will just become this. So notice the difference between letter A and letter B. So that negative, it does matter if it's inside the parentheses or not. All right, so just a few more of these. 4a, distribute the 3 through. So we have 4 to the third power, so 4 times 4 times 4. That's going to give me a 64. And then p to the third. Okay, so a single variable to a exponent will just be p to the third. 4b, so distribute the exponent to the negative 5 and to the t squared. So negative 5 times negative 5 will give me a positive 25. T squared squared, that's going to give me a t to the fourth. So again, going back to a power, make sure to multiply. All right, so getting into some problems that get a little more hairy. Letter C, so we have two pieces inside the parentheses. Again, you got a power out front, so we need to distribute it to both pieces. So x to the negative 2 times x to the negative 2 to the power of 3. Make sure to multiply those. So that's going to give me an x to the negative 6 times y. Now y to the 0 to the third power is just going to give me a y to the 0. 0 times 3 will just give me 0. And if you recall, anything to a 0 power is just going to be a 1. So this one can actually just drop off. In this one, we have x to a negative power. So I need to move that to the bottom. So that's going to become 1 over x to the 6th. So that's a simplified form. For C, it's kind of like we have two of these problems in one. So they're separated by a multiplication sign right here. So we're going to evaluate this and this first. So we're going to simplify those. So distribute that 4. That's going to give me an x to the 8th, a y to the 12th, times, distribute that negative 4. That's going to give me an x to the negative 8 and a y to the negative 16. Okay, so we have that. But now what are you going to actually do in these problems is kind of go back to what we did at the beginning of the video and use multiplication properties of exponents. So I can bring the x to the 8th and the x to the negative 8th together to give me an x to the 0, and then y to the 12th and y to the negative 16th will give me a y to the negative 4th. So once again, the x to the 0 is going to cancel out, and I have a y to the negative 4th. Got to move that to the bottom. So a 1 over y to the 4th will be my answer for that one. All right, so finishing off some problems. So remember to simplify what's being separated by those little multiplication signs. So here we got to separate those and simplify them separately. So we have a to the negative 3rd to the 4th. That's going to give me an a to the negative 12th. Times a to the 7th to the 2nd. It's going to give me an a to the 14th. Okay, so now we have the same base. We have an a, so we can combine these together. So a to the negative 12th, a to the 14th, that's going to give me an a to the second. So negative 12 plus 14. 11, so simplifying these separately. So we have an xy, that can be simplified. X squared to the third, that's going to give me an x to the sixth. And then y to the 12th. So we have the x's we can combine, x and x to the sixth. That will give me x to the seventh. So x to the 1 plus an x to the sixth. And the y's we can combine together, a y and a y to the 12th. That's going to give me a y to the 13th. So remember, there's an invisible one there. All right, we'll keep chugging along on these. Distribute the 3 through on number 15. So negative 2 to the third. So remember, negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Okay, that's going to give me a negative 8. X to the fifth to the third, going to give me an x to the 15th. 16. There's that negative out front, so we're just going to plop that right on the front. And then distribute the exponent through. So 3 to the 2 and 3 to the x to the fifth. So 2 to the third will give me an 8. And x to the fifth to the third will give me an x to the 15th. So notice how 15 and 16, they look a lot alike, but just that negative can make it different. And actually, even in this case, they give you the same answer. But that has all to do with the exponents, so just be careful. 17. So simplifying these separately, distribute the 5 through. So we have a to the 10th and b also to the 10th times a to the negative 10. And what can we combine together here? We have the a's, a to the 10th, a to the negative 10th. That's going to give me an a to the 0. And then just b to the 10th. And the a to the 0, well, can just drop off. That's just a 1. So my final answer would just be a b to the 10th.